Hi all. Today I will tell you a very interesting manhwa. Let's go. Our story begins on a small island where the main character lived in a village with her grandmother. The day was sunny with some clouds. Suddenly, a woman screams from the house. These were the cries of the main character. You could tell from the sounds that she had some kind of problem. The grandmother heard her granddaughter's screams and asked through the door what happened to her. She worried about the health of her granddaughter and protected her like the apple of her eye. The girl had a very bad stomachache. There were those very women's days, because of their genetics, they were worse for her than for other girls. The pain in the abdomen still did not go away, and the girl herself was not sufficiently able to help herself. Usually her grandmother looked after her health and not herself. By the way, the girl's name is Aqua. She is a simple village girl who loved spending time with her grandmother. Since childhood, she was raised only by her grandmother and they loved each other very much. Granny ordered Aqua to get out of the toilet as soon as possible. It really didn't make sense for her to be there for so long, because she wasn't able to help herself anyway. Grandma knew how to help her. Aqua understood this, but she felt embarrassed and somewhat embarrassed about accepting help from her grandmother because of such a problem. Aqua agreed to leave as she had no other choice. If she had stayed in the toilet, the pain in her stomach would have increased even more, and Granny knew the methods of treatment. She slowly opened the creaking door and left the toilet reluctantly. They did not live in a big way and were not even middle class, because their house had not been renovated for a long time. The red-haired girl came out of the toilet with a downcast look, as she was embarrassed and ashamed. The grandmother was touched each time by how her granddaughter was embarrassed because this was not the first time that her grandmother helped her with problems of abdominal pain. Grandma always examined the girl's problem areas with a cotton swab. She brought the Q-tip to her granddaughter's problem area with her elderly hands and began to examine. The grandmother examined the girl and helped her. She no longer had stomach pains. Granny was glad that she could help her granddaughter again. Their house was decorated in the style of a traditional Korean house, with many large vases and pots for storing olive oil, milk and other products in them. Aqua was annoyed at the fact that she was unlucky with her genetics. Despite the fact that she was very beautiful, she constantly had health problems. The girl was very lucky with the fact that she had big joysticks and strong legs, but she was not at all lucky with her health. And no medicine would help her. Her height was 171 centimeters and in all other respects she was exactly the same ordinary girl as everyone else. Except for her health condition. She often sat on the floor in her room and looked at her reflection in the mirror, thinking along the way about how she could improve her medical condition. She herself did not understand medicine, because when she tried to cure herself, everything turned out the other way around and she only harmed. She was afraid that she would never find a boyfriend or husband because of her health and genetics. I was afraid that I would be alone. But fortunately, her grandmother was always by her side. Only her grandmother knew about her problem. She trusted her grandma and loved her, but she would also like to love and be loved with a guy and not just with her grandma. After her grandmother's medical procedures, she went swimming. Since she lived on an island, she was surrounded by water. Her grandmother taught her how to swim since childhood, and Aqua really liked it. Even though Aqua lived rather poorly, she had a rather expensive swim kit that her grandmother gave her for her birthday. In addition to swimming, Granny also taught Aqua how to fish. Due to the fact that the soil on the island was not the most fertile, the population of the village mainly ate fish products. When she went to the beach for a swim, Aqua couldn't even imagine that her life would change drastically that day. Suddenly, not far from her, she noticed that some young guy about her age was drowning and screaming for help. Aqua saved the stranger and dragged him on her back to her grandmother's house. She was sure that her grandmother could help him. Grandmother, hearing her voice and screams, immediately ran out into the street to find out why her granddaughter was making such a noise. She saw how her granddaughter dragged a stranger to their house on her back, but it was not so important. What was more important was that the guy was unconscious and needed urgent help. The guy was completely wet. By the time he arrived, he had already lost his memory. It was obvious that he was not a local as he could not swim. Everyone on the island knew how to swim. Aqua thought the stranger had gone to heaven, but Grandma knew he still had a pulse. She helped him in every way she could. After a while the guy woke up. He was in an unfamiliar place and lay on the floor next to soft pillows. The stranger looked around the place where he was and suddenly noticed Aqua. He was a little embarrassed and scared. He didn't know what to do in this situation. The red-haired girl noticed that the guy woke up and was glad that he was all right. She was just about to cook some food for the stranger to eat too. She asked him why he wanted to go to heaven so early if life is such a valuable thing. But the guy was embarrassed and did not know how to answer. She looked at his sad face. In vain I blurted out such a thing, she thought. Aqua didn't want to offend the stranger, she just asked. Aqua gave him food so that he would at least slightly restore his strength and energy after what had happened. It was difficult for the guy to even just thank her because he was shy. The stranger in the blue sweater suddenly felt very sad. He lowered his head as he was ashamed to look at Aqua and eat her food. Suddenly, he began to tremble slightly and the first drops of tears began to flow from his eyes. It was difficult for him to control his emotions after what had happened. He tried to restrain himself, but he did not succeed and, succumbing to his emotions, he began to roar right in front of her. Aqua was worried about his condition. He burst into tears and thanked her for the food. He was not yet ready to leave, so he stayed with them until the evening. They allocated a separate room for him and gave him a soft pillow with a warm blanket. The light fell on him through the cracks in the door and he could not sleep because of the discomfort. He was not used to sleeping on the floor, especially on a pillow, in his opinion, which was not at all comfortable. Suddenly, a guy in a gray shirt heard a woman scream. He almost fell asleep, but this cry woke him up. He immediately realized that it was the familiar voice of Aqua, the girl who saved his life and who fed him a delicious lunch. He was worried about her, so he decided to get up from the floor once he woke up anyway and check what happened. The boy could hear Grandma and Aqua whispering about something, but he couldn't hear what it was. At that moment, curiosity flared up in him. He heard her cry again and did not understand what was happening outside. The grandmother told her granddaughter to be quiet so that the guest would not wake up. The guy opened the door slightly and decided to take a look at what they were doing there. The guy thought that the grandmother was squeezing out some kind of pimple on her back for her granddaughter, but he was very mistaken. The gap in the door was too small for him to see anything clearly, so he tried to open the door a little more. He was shocked by what he saw. He was very embarrassed and did not know what to do. What he saw shocked him. He saw how the grandmother treated her granddaughter with a cotton swab. He was very embarrassed and he was ashamed of the fact that he did not turn away. He stood outside the door and continued to watch without stopping. He liked to see the whole scene. For the first time in his life, he experienced such emotions. Luckily, Aqua was fine. Granny knew her business, and therefore she was able to quickly and effectively cure her granddaughter. But there was a small problem: the girl did not have clean clothes left, and she really needed them now. Grandmother was at a loss about how much her granddaughter was a klutz. Granny made a change of clothes out of rags and ropes. Aqua was very uncomfortable, but Grandma said it was just for one night. The new clothes caused her a lot of discomfort, but she resigned herself because the clothing stores were already closed because it was late. Meanwhile, the guy in the gray shirt still continued to stare without a moment's distraction. To some extent, he fell in love with Aqua because she bravely saved him. The next day, the guy woke up early, looked around the house and sat down on a wooden bench in front of the house. At this time, the red-haired girl was returning to her home with a bag singing along to various melodies. As Aqua was heading towards the front door, the boy greeted her. She also greeted him politely in return. All this time, the guy was waiting for Aqua to ask her a very important question. But he did not know how to start because he was embarrassed and shy. He asked her if she wanted to go and visit the city. He really wanted to go home with her. Of course, a girl who has lived almost all her life in the village would always dream of visiting the city at least once. The boy in the gray shirt suggested that she go to the city with him today, but the girl did not know how to answer him because it was the first time she had been offered this. He said that he could help the red-haired girl with finding a place to live and work. That she has the opportunity to improve the conditions of her life. Aqua was very confused and did not understand how to react. She was confused. For her, visiting the city, and even more so staying there to live and work, was the ultimate dream, but here she was given all this literally on a spoon. Suddenly, the guy heard how his grandmother approached them from about a distance of 5 to 10 meters. She told the guy not to give her granddaughter false hopes. The attention of the youth immediately focused on an elderly woman who simply wanted to protect her granddaughter. Granny said that a village girl has absolutely nothing to do in a huge and crowded city, especially considering that the number of people living in their village is very small. The guy said in a slightly hesitant and trembling voice that he just wants to repay her for helping her. Despite the fact that the guy was just a student, his father was Taylor Choi. Hearing such a grandmother as if struck by lightning. She thought it was a good idea to marry her granddaughter to a wealthy urban settler. The guy also added that his father is the vice chairman of the Tayash group. And in fact, the guy did not lie to her. The guest promised that he would help Aqua with employment in the city and search for housing. If he tells his father that she saved his life, then he will definitely help arrange her somewhere and find her a home. He also said that his grandfather is the chairman. Grandmother believed his words more and more. Aqua was delighted that she had saved the chairman's grandson himself. Granny asked the guy if he, in turn, could confirm his words in practice, to which the guy offered to show her his documents. The guy in the gray shirt provided the grandmother with all the necessary documents. Aqua was very happy while Grandma read the documents. A few years ago, when the grass was greener and the chocolate tasted better, it was a very rainy evening. Grandma was younger and prettier then. That evening, my grandmother had already gone to bed, as it was late. It was on that evening that a new man appeared in her life who would change her from head to toe. Suddenly she woke up abruptly from the fact that someone was knocking on her house. The woman outside the door knocked harder and harder for her mother. The woman at first thought that they were beggars, but then she recognized a familiar voice and realized that this was her own daughter. She ran out of bed like a bullet to open the door. She was right, her daughter Esther. Esther returned to her mother some time later. The woman started screaming and questioning her daughter in a panic. She did not understand anything, did not understand where her daughter had disappeared and what was happening here in general. After Esther came home, the rain only intensified. Various screams were heard from the house, and the rain seemed to be drumming at its pace, falling with its drops on the ground, on the roof of the house and on its windows. All these cries were issued by a small, harmless child with red hair. The newborn girl did not even imagine what future awaits her. The grandmother asked her daughter who the father of this child was. It was important for her to know this, since now she was not just a mother, but also became a grandmother with a new addition to the family. From the last of her strength, Esther named the name of the father of the child, the chairman of the group, Tayash Donald Lee. Grandmother was very surprised to hear the name of such a high-ranking person. She couldn't believe her ears. For a second it seemed to her that this was not reality but a prolonged dream. Remembering that Donald Lee and Thomas Choi co-founded the Tayash Group and invested in the global market together, she made the decision to let her granddaughter go with the young guy. The guy lived in a big way in a very rich family. He, his father and brothers all lived under the same roof in a luxury high-tech house with a swimming pool. Inside, the house seemed even larger due to the high ceilings and large rooms. At the entrance to the house, they were met by servants who worked for the guy's father. Suddenly, a guy in a white t-shirt ran towards them. It was one of the guy's brothers. By the way, I forgot to mention that the guy in the gray shirt is called Chance. The brothers did not see each other for a long time and missed each other, because as soon as they met they immediately hugged each other tightly. This is what true fraternal friendship is called. Aqua bowed respectfully as she greeted Chance's brother. His brother was surprised that such a beautiful girl showed such heroism and courage. The guy in the white t-shirt grabbed Aqua Lee's hands and began to thank her from the bottom of his heart. He was incredibly grateful to this red-haired looking ordinary girl for saving his own brother. Chance asked his brother where his father is at the moment, but his brother couldn't give a concrete answer under Aqua. He was a little embarrassed by her presence. Meanwhile, their father was working hard and was very, very busy. He worked so hard that the sweat poured from him like a river. We cannot know what exactly he did, but we must believe that he improved society, developed medicine and education. Positive is always the key to success. Dad was already a little old, but he always had a sense of humor. But when it came to work, he was the most brutal dictator. This was a necessary measure for the accomplishment of the objectives set by the campaign. The long-haired girl was close to him and controlled everything that happened in the house and reported to her boss. She was very experienced and ambitious. She also loved power very much, but she herself did not possess it. After the father finished his business, he left his office to see his son and thank his savior. The man slowly descended the stairs in soft slippers. He was dressed in the latest fashion and did not hide it. All his things were only branded. He was head over heels in love with his wealth. The father scolded his son for wanting to go to heaven prematurely. He said that his actions were stupid and unreasonable. Chance sincerely apologized to his father and promised that this would never happen again. Chance introduced his father to a red-haired girl who saved his life. Aqua Lead bowed gallantly in greeting with respect to the elder. The man with glasses thanked the red-haired girl for saving his son's life. He was very worried about his boy and was afraid that he would never see him again. Taylor Choi asked the young lady what her hobbies were. He wanted to help her get a job by finding out what she likes to do the most. But since Aqua never worked anywhere, she didn't know what to say to her. She didn't have any experience. Seeing that the red-haired girl could not answer the question, Chance took control of the situation and suggested that his father find her a college, because the girl is only 20 years old. The father agreed that it would be a better decision, so Chance thanked him. To tell the truth, Aqua didn't understand anything from their conversation. It was the first time she had heard about the existence of colleges. Taylor Choi asked the girl if she had a place where she could stay and live. She shook her head and said that before that she lived with her grandmother in a village on an island. A guy in a gray sweatshirt suggested to his father that Aqua stay with them until graduation from college, since it is not safe for a girl to live alone in the city. Since Chance was right, his father agreed with him. Further, after their conversations, Chance showed the red-haired girl a room in which she could stay to live. Aqua was pleasantly surprised to see such a huge room full of furniture and even using it. She could not believe that she would live in such a beautiful and large room. The rooms in Grandma's house were all very small and traditional, but this one is large and modern. Chance left the room and said that Aqua needed a rest, so he left her alone so as not to interfere. The red-haired girl thanked Chance. She looked around and did not understand why one person should live in such a large room. Everything was new to her, but slowly she got used to the new environment. She was even more surprised when she saw that in her room there was a bathtub the size of almost a small pool. It was the first time she had been surrounded by so much luxury. She immediately filled the tub with water and dived in. Before that, she could sit in a bath with warm water only in public baths where many girls washed, and hear a whole bath and only for her. She hummed different melodies to herself while relaxing her body in warm water. She was very happy. It was as if a bag of gold or cash had fallen on her head. The doors in her bathroom were decorated with different patterns. It was an expensive white birchwood door. After getting out of the bath, the first thing she did was dry her hair with a towel. For the first time in her life, she experienced such pleasure. A few hours later, night had already fallen and the house was surrounded by pitch darkness, but from its windows light still poured onto the courtyard. Some man carefully walked along the corridor of the house, trying not to make a lot of noise. He was wearing slippers that helped him make less noise. It was Chance standing at Aqua's door and thinking about something. He clearly intended or wanted to enter there but wasn't sure if he should. He pulled the door handle and tried to open it. The handle creaked slightly from its mechanism. He opened it very slowly so that Aqua wouldn't hear anything. And so he slightly opened the door through the crack of which small rays of light entered her room. But he suddenly stopped and did not open completely. Still, he was unsure of his actions. He stood outside the door and did not know what to do next, because he had already slightly opened it and Aqua would surely notice a stranger outside the door. But he made the right decision, considering that he should not go there without permission, despite the fact that this is his house, because now this is her personal room, and besides, she is a girl and he is a guy. But he was not upset, because she could always come in another time. He just wanted the red-haired girl to have a better rest and relax. Suddenly, a guy in a gray shirt heard a woman scream and stopped. At home, only a few workers and Aqua were among the girls. He knew full well that the housemaid's wouldn't scream, which meant Aqua was in trouble. He immediately, without hesitation, turned back towards her door and ran to help her. He was very worried about her because he had warm feelings for her. Chance, before opening the door, loudly said that he would come in now and only then opened it. He did this out of his gentlemanly urges and habits. Entering the room, he saw a red-haired girl lying on the floor and barely moving. He immediately rushed to her side to help. Chance leaned over to her and began to ask where and what hurts her, but it was difficult for her to answer him because she had severe pain. Chance offered to take her to the hospital, but she didn't have the strength to even get up, let alone the hospital. She was really in a lot of pain. She said that she had a very bad pain in the abdomen, and Chance immediately remembered that this had already happened in her grandmother's house. He immediately began to think about how he could help her. He remembered why her stomach hurt and what methods her grandmother treated her granddaughter with. He would not be able to help her himself, so he began to think who could. But Aqua started screaming again, and he realized that there was no time for reflection at all. He needed to quickly find someone who could help her. After a while, the screams of the house subsided. About 15 or 20 minutes had passed since her last cry. 3 brothers stood at her door guarding the entrance to the room. They were all worried about her state of health, so they were waiting for what would happen to her. One of the brothers in a white sweater asked Chance why she made such a fuss and made a fuss in the house, but Chance refrained from answering. The older brother asked if it was an emergency, but Chance found it difficult to answer even such a simple question. Suddenly, the door suddenly opened. The brothers hoped to get a positive result. Chance never had a chance to answer his brother. The door was opened by 2 housekeepers. Chance called them to help Aqua as they are girls and would better understand her problem and her pain. One of the brothers, who was in a white sweater, was sitting in his room with his subordinate and talking quietly. The door of his room was very beautiful and expensive. The guy asked his subordinate to tell him what happened to their guest and why she screamed so loudly throughout the house. She carefully, without exaggeration, told the whole truth to the guy in the white sweater. He did not believe his ears at first. He asked her the authenticity of her words. He couldn't believe that Aqua could have some kind of stomach problems since she looked like a normal girl. The subordinate said that Aqua was just unlucky with the genetics of her body because she often had various stomach pains that she could not do anything about. Chance's older brother also did not keep himself in the dark and in turn asked his fair-haired subordinate. Both brothers were shocked by what they heard and could not believe their ears. To some extent, they thought that the subordinates were lying, but they understood that they would not have done so. And now the night has passed and the next day has come. The warm light of the sun covered their mansion like a soft blanket. The head of the house was about to go to work and his personal assistant was tying his tie, as she knew how to do it best of all. The head of the house asked her why the house was so noisy last night, to which the girl with dark hair replied that it was all about their new guest Aqua. The man asked what exactly happened to the girl, that her screams could be heard throughout the house, as well as in the courtyard. His subordinate hesitated a little as she was embarrassed to say such things. She took several seconds to choose her words in order to be able to convey the correct information to her employer. Taylor Choi did not wait for her to come up with her lie and therefore, getting angry, demanded that she immediately tell him everything. Of course, she didn't resist and informed him about Aqua's health problems. Then he drove to work in his luxury business class car. It was a very expensive car that almost all businessmen drove. Chance's father had his own personal driver so he could sit quietly in the back seat and think about this and that. He could not imagine how bad the girl's genetics must be for her to scream so loudly that she almost sobbed from simple stomach pains. Meanwhile, Aqua had just woken up and did not want to get out of her comfortable bed, as she felt very guilty towards the owners of the house. It's only been 1 day and she's already done something that would make her ashamed and embarrassed to look into the eyes of Chance, his brothers and his father. Suddenly she heard someone knocking on her door and she asked who was standing there. The knocks were neat and not strong, as if the person knocking had already done it more than 1,000,000 times. Chance's father's subordinate entered the room and warned Aqua that Mr. Choi wanted to see her in his office. Aqua thought that he would scold her for what she did last night. She asked anyway why Chance's father wanted to see her in his office. She was very much afraid because he was a stately and successful man. The red-haired girl understood that she could not ignore his desire and was obliged to go and meet Mr. Choi in his office. Taylor Choi's office was huge and multi-story. On the roof of the building there was a powerful internet antenna that maintained communication throughout the building. By phone, the secretary informed her boss that Aqua had arrived at the meeting point and Mr. Choi gave permission to let her in. Aqua was very worried and nervously bowed in front of Chance's father to greet him. She hoped he wasn't angry about what had happened. Taylor Choi sat at his desk and greeted her back. It was evident that he was in a good mood and was glad to see Aqua. He ordered her to point to a white sofa for the red-haired girl to sit down. She obeyed him and settled down on the couch. Mr. Choi began to examine his son's savior. He was glad that such a beautiful girl saved his boy and did not let him drown. He gave her a phone in an envelope so that Aqua would have contact with his family in the big city in case she got lost. Aqua was very happy with such an acquisition, for which she sincerely thanked for such an expensive gift. The bespectacled man started the conversation by looking at a couple of college options for Aqua to graduate. Aqua was very embarrassed that she received so many benefits just because of saving a human. Aqua said that he didn't have to do this and that she could live life without a higher education, but Mr. Choi made it clear to the red-haired girl that it was not at all difficult for him and it did not take him much time. He also added to his monologue that Aqua must find a job in order to gain invaluable office experience. He explained to her that this was very important for her future career and that she could work in his office. Aqua said she would do everything in her power to be helpful to Mr. Choi and his family. The man was surprised by her ambition and willingness to work. Apparently, this brought up a rural lifestyle in her. After that, the man with glasses added to his words that she could start a new job tomorrow. He was very grateful to this girl because she was the very reason why Chance can still walk the earth and smile. The red-haired girl looked around the building where Mr. Choi worked and then returned home. By this time it was already dark and night fell. The red-haired girl was very worried because Mr. Choi gave her the opportunity to work as a secretary. She was afraid that she would not cope with the work and would not be able to take on such a huge responsibility, but she was not afraid of difficulties. Suddenly, the knock of the door interrupted the flow of her thoughts. She immediately cast her glance towards the door in order to find out who was knocking there. One of the house workers with darkish hair entered her room. She said that dinner would be in the courtyard by the outdoor pool. Aqua was surprised. She could not even think that someday she would be able to have the honor of having dinner by the pool. The girl placed the box on Aqua's bed and said that she would need to change into this. Aqua immediately looked at the box eagerly and thanked the housekeeper. The box contained a women's bathing suit. Aqua was very happy to get a new bathing suit as her old one was a bit small for her, but she didn't have enough money to buy a new one as it was very expensive. The guys saw her waved as a sign that she would come and eat with them. She was glad to be able to dine al fresco by the pool. The eldest of the brothers said that she should not be so closed in herself and that she should feel at home. Aqua still felt very embarrassed about receiving so many gifts and living in such a luxurious home. He also asked her to show how she can swim. The guys themselves were bad swimmers and Aqua lived on an island off the coast, so she had a lot of experience in swimming. She dived and showed different methods of how to swim. The guys were delighted that she could move so quickly underwater. Aqua swam very well, her ability level was almost on par with professional swimmers. Her lifestyle helped her hone this skill. She got very wet, but luckily the temperature was good because the chance that she would get sick or have pain in her stomach again was small. But Chance was still worried about her state of health and asked her to dry off just in case so that later she would not have any problems. All the guys were shocked by her abilities. They thought that the hillbilly could not do anything, but they were very much mistaken. After swimming, the guys went inside and invited Aqua to their place as well so that she would not be alone in such a huge house. In the older brother's room, they drank cherry juice in honor of the fact that their brother Chance returned home safe and sound. Aqua also drank delicious cherry juice with everyone else. The juice was not natural, and she immediately noticed it, because the juice that my grandmother made was of a completely different taste and color. This is one of the disadvantages of city life, non-natural products. It was late, but the light in the eldest brother's room was still bright. The guys had a lot of fun at night and had a great time playing different games. One of the guys who was wearing green shorts fell asleep on the couch. He was very tired after all these games and decided to take a nap. Chance was no exception and fell asleep too. After a hearty meal, you always want to sleep soundly. especially after such a delicious dinner by the pool. Everyone else was sleeping too. The men of the Choi family had everything they could dream of: money, fame, wealth, delicious food, good clothes, and much, much more. Other people envied them and tried to look up to them. The men of the Choi family usually did not pay attention to the appearance of the girls or their character. It was important for them that the woman was useful at work. But Aqua was special. Chance's parents divorced a long time ago because the guys grew up under the tutelage of their father, because he had more money and opportunities to give a good future to his children. These men did not know how to love women, they only pretended to do it. In fact, everything was not at all like that, and sooner or later the women who communicated with them understood this. The next day the weather was great, no rain or anything like that. The climate was excellent. Warm sunshine and a good light breeze combined to provide ideal conditions. Someone knocked on her door. It was a man's strong hand. Most likely, it was the eldest of the brothers of the Choi family. Aqua opened the door and said good morning to the guy in the blue sweater. She asked why he knocked on her door. Aqua was wearing a white office shirt and skirt. She changed her dress style to match the Choi family's standards. The guy in the blue jacket wanted to show the red-haired village girl the city so that she could navigate herself without any help and move around the city. Aqua said she had to go to work and unfortunately she didn't have time to play with Chance's brother. She didn't want to piss off Taylor Choi after everything he did for her. But the guy did not listen to her and, holding her hand, pulled her along. Her skin was very soft and warm, which the guy immediately noticed and complimented Aqua. He ran and pulled her along, saying that he would show her the whole city up and down. He really wanted to go somewhere to relax with her. The city was very crowded as always. People went to work, shopping, and someone just went out for a walk. On the streets one could often meet vendors in the bazaar. They stopped at one of the stalls near the bazaar. The guy in the blue shirt was trying on different monster masks and jokingly scared the red-haired girl. They had a great time together as if on a date in love. Chance's older brother really had warm feelings in Aqua. They went to one of the most expensive restaurants in the city where a table for two had already been booked in advance. It was not the most elite restaurant but still expensive. Since it was noon in the restaurant there were not so many people, they all came here to relax and take a break from work and other life problems. Our main characters ordered delicious food and had fun. There was a pot with a beautiful tropical rare flower on the table. These two had a great time together and enjoyed every second. They chatted about various things, but mostly the guy in the blue shirt asked Aqua if she liked the city. She said that the city is fine, but as a country girl it is very difficult for her to get used to such a lifestyle and sudden changes in circumstances. From such a large number of people, her head was already starting to hurt. When they returned home, the guy confessed his feelings to the red-haired girl and offered to meet. He said that she was to him like a muse to Mozart. But she completely forgot that she was supposed to come to the office on her first day at work. The eldest of the brothers distracted her so much that it flew out of her mind. Taylor Choi did not like this at all and became very angry at her such behavior. He gave her shelter, a roof and a job, and she didn't even show up for her first day of work. It's past lunchtime and Aqua still hasn't shown up at Choi's office. He thought she was very disciplined, but he was mistaken in her. He asked his subordinate on the phone if the red-haired girl who got a job with them yesterday had still come. He hoped she would say yes, but he was wrong. A woman's voice on the phone said that Aqua had not yet appeared at work and no one had seen her. He got very angry but thanked the subordinate for the information. Taylor Choi couldn't believe Aqua was such an ungrateful girl. Anger enveloped his mind. The bespectacled man hated when things didn't go according to plan, he especially disliked when his subordinates didn't do their jobs. Meanwhile, Aqua and Chance's older brother were returning home. Now they were not just friends but a couple. She agreed to meet him because he was the most courageous among all three brothers.